We'll make it do what it do. We will make it work, my friend. Uh,
Make it work, bro.
all right, all right. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for sticking around. Had a few technical difficulties getting Charles on here, but we are good to go now. Welcome to GoGo Talks, brought to you by GoGoTix. I'm your host Malachi Johnson. Today we are joined by the one and only Charles Stephenson. How are you, my friend?
I am good.
That's good to
How
hear.
you doing?
What's
How you doing?
that?
I
I'm
said, how
good,
you
man.
doing?
I'm good,
Okay.
man. A little warm out here in California today, but other than that, I'm
I don't
okay.
want to hear. I want to hear about it.
I hear you. I hear you. Well, why don't you start by telling everybody what about your history in the music industry, and yeah, let's just start there.
I don't know when to start, but I tell you, I'm gonna start.
Start from the beginning. We got
Right.
plenty of time. We got start
Got
from the
plenty of time.
beginning.
Okay, I'm gonna start from how I got to DC. So I moved to DC from New York in 1970,
Hmm.
and moving to DC in 1970, I moved because I was a community activist. I moved to Washington to do more community organizing, uh, to help change the situation, the political situation in the nation. And I thought that working in Washington, D.C. was the best place for me to be. At that point in time, we say working in the belly of the beast.
Okay.
But I got the first job I got actually working in Washington was working for former Congressman Walter Fauntleroy. And I got a job working to organize Southeast for the bus boycott. The DC bus system used to be run by DC Transit, which was privately owned. And the people in Washington were very upset, very disgruntled with the service, and decided to boycott the bus system. So I got a job working with Walter Fauntleroy to organize uh, the bus boycott in Southeast Washington. At the point in time, I was living in Southeast. Let me tell you the truth, Malachi. I came from New York. I'm living in Southeast, and I'm thinking I'm in LA somewhere because it's a whole different situation. I mean, I had a nice apartment with a terrace. Man, I was living large. And when I just tell people I lived in Southeast, they say, "You live in Southeast?" Like, like it was a downer. And I couldn't understand that. I said, "Yeah, man, I live in Southeast." They said, "Man." But anyway,
Well, what do you attribute that to? Like, you were just in a specific area that was nicer, or
well, I think what people,
compared
again,
to New York?
I'm coming from New York. I came from Harlem,
I got
and
you.
a whole different, demographic how it's set up. So
Right.
at that point in time, 1970, and I moved into this new apartment complex right off of Barnaby Street, Stoneleigh Hill. It was new, and it was, looked good to me coming from, a tenement in Harlem. You know what I mean?
I
So
got
anyway,
you.
I'm living good, but I'm doing community organizing. I'm working with young people. I'm working in Valley Green in Southeast.
Hmm.
And one day, my best friend and I, we have opened my apartment, and we hear these guys across the hall making music.
Hmm.
So we were inquisitive. We knocked on the door. They let us in, and they were practicing. And that was Sugar Bear, Andre, Pops. I think Preacher was on the drums. Donald Fields was on the guitar, and they were just rehearsing. Man, they were playing Grand Funk. Man, they were really more into rock at that point in time. And
Right.
so we got into discussion, Malachi, and they asked us if we would manage them. And so my best
We gotta slow down a little bit. So okay, so you moved, and how long are you in this fancy new apartment before you start hearing these guys playing
it was
music?
about a couple of months.
A few months. Okay, a couple of months. And so you hadn't seen these guys before, and you just happened to go and knock on their door.
Well, I seen the
And
one guy that lived there, but I never seen or heard these guys practicing before.
okay, and
Right.
so immediately um, from the time that you walked in and talked to them, they wanted you to manage them. Like they
Yeah,
didn't.
because I guess we showed interest.
Okay.
They were teenagers. I think a couple were still in junior high school. A couple were still in Baloo. And we really showed real interest in what they were doing. Okay.
Hmm.
And it was maybe a half an hour conversation. And through that conversation, they asked if we would manage them or we would work with them, we would help them.
Okay.
Malachi, at that point in time, I could not say no. I mean, because I gave you the background. I came to Washington doing community organizing, working in the community. So how could I tell these young brothers that were asking for some help? No. I mean, at that point in time, really, I had no.
How old were they at this time?
How old was who? Me?
How old were they? No, well, how old? Yeah, how old?
The couple of them were still in junior high. So they were like 14, 15.
Okay.
Maybe, I think a couple were 14. And then a couple were in Blue at the time. So it might have been 15, 16, like that. And it was 1970, 71, something like that. And I said, okay. And that really started it. I mean, I knew nothing about the music business. But I did know this. I did tell them, I said, look, you guys are playing that rock. I think you're going to have to change your repertoire if you're going to get jobs. Okay. And so they had no names, so they decided to take the name Experience Unlimited because, again, they were playing homage to Jimi Hendrix and all that. So their name reflected that. They wanted to be, they really loved Jimi Hendrix, but they wanted to take their music to the next step. So thus Experience Unlimited.
Gotcha. Well, so, okay, a couple of quick questions. So what was it that you think that, like, what impression do you think you made on them for them to say after an hour and a half, we need some help? And why do you think that they thought that you could help them?
Well, I think because we showed sincere interest.
Gotcha.
I mean, I think that's all it was, Malachi, because we really showed, and we were interested. We were interested in them as, young brothers. They were doing something positive, and we just got involved with them in conversation, back and forth. And I think that's what it was. I think they felt our sincereness,
Right.
Yeah, because we really were, very compassionate, and we were very about, at that point in time anyway, as we are now, we was very much into trying to help young folks in the community. And I think that we communicated that to them.
And what made you say, like, what was the climate at the time, or what made you say that you thought them sort of veering away from the rock sound was the best thing to do? Like, what was the logic behind that? Why do you feel that was important?
I think anybody at that point in time would have said that. If you were, a black band and you were trying to get work, then you should be playing some R&B at that point in time. So it was just a logical, to me, discussion that we had to have.
Right.
And they acquiesced it. They understood what we were saying. If they really were trying to get, gigs and wanted to really play, they had to play to audiences what they wanted to hear. And I think that's what really stuck with them.
So was their goal at this time, obviously they were young, was their goal at this time to just play, like I had Wink from Junkyard on yesterday, and I was asking him, what was who were you trying to be? Like you mentioned, they were playing Grand Funk. Were they trying to be Grand Funk, or were they trying to just be I
think at that point in time, I think probably, and you would have to query them, but I think probably more like Sly or something like that, Sly and the Family Stone. Because I think they were trying to be funky, and they wanted to be a little bit outrageous at the same time. So I think that was the band I think probably that they were trying to sweat at that point in time.
Well, but I guess I mean in terms of level of success, like, because if we're talking about, they're playing other people's music at that moment.
No, Malachi, at that point, 14, 15, they just wanted to. So they really didn't have, you know what I mean? So at that point, it kind of like transferred to me in terms of where we could go.
To set the vision.
But I think at that point, they were 14, 15, they just wanted to play music.
Right. So then what were your thoughts? And the reason I'm harping on this is because that's sort of the point of the show is to connect the dots between, the go-go industry as it is and as it has been, and, either what happened in the past or what can happen in the future to propel it past where it has been. So I'm curious as to what
okay, let me say this. So at that point in time, I'm on a learning curve I'm trying to learn the business. I'm trying to learn them. I'm trying to put them in a better position as to, how they can get gigs and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But let me tell you, when they were first organized, they just wanted to play. So we played at fish fries. We played around the community. We did a lot of free gigging, as you probably know.
Oh,
we did, and they were happy at doing it. So initially, that's how we came out. We came out just playing as much as we could. And then eventually, we got an arrangement with the DC Department of Recreation, the Showmobile. And that propelled us to become a little bit more professional. Because I don't know if you ever heard of Raymond Gray, but Raymond Gray used to run the Showmobile, and he used to run the Ambassadors Band. And he was a true drill sergeant in terms of being at your gig on time, have your equipment ready, whatever you're gonna wear, be ready to hit. If you were supposed to hit at 6 o'clock, hit that 6 o'clock on the dot. That meant being there at 5 or 5:30. I mean, so he kind of immersed us in the professionalism of the business. Now, again, I'm still young myself, so I'm learning as we're going along. So that's who we kind of were. Now, for your audience, when I started managing EU, I started understanding that in Washington, there were a plethora of, self-contained bands in Washington. And most of them, were, they were funk, top 40 band, cover bands, but they were good. And I'm now. I got a job working with. I had a clerical skills program. I worked with young people, teaching them, instructing them on clerical skills. How to type, how to file, all those kind of skills that you needed to get a job, probably in the federal government at that point in time. And I would always hear the youngins talking about they were going to a go-go. I said, go-go? I mean, what's a go-go? So I asked them what a go-go was. Right now, we're still in like the 71, 72 time frame, right? And so it turned out that the go-go was what we called a dance in New York. But in DC, because of Smokey Robinson going to a go-go, they didn't call the go-go a dance. They didn't call it a go-go a dance. They called it a go-go.
Right.
Okay. So that's what it was. So my first go-go I went to was at Byrne Manor, and I heard the Young Senators and Chuck Brown, Malachi. It blew my mind. I mean, I tell you, I have never, and I still hear them in my mind right now. The Young Senators. I've mentioned Sly and the Family Stone. So if any of your older listeners have ever seen or heard Young Senators back in those days, they understand what I'm saying. Them brothers could play. I mean, they put on a show that was like beyond. And they were on the same show with the Soul Searchers. So you had Young Senators who come out and they were costumed and they looked good, and they had a lot of little antics that they would involved in their show. And then you had the Soul Searchers come on after them, and they sounded just like the record, man.
Really?
The record they were playing, they sounded just like the record.
So at this point, what record did they have out? Was it
no, whatever record they were playing, they were all top 40.
So it wasn't their record. It was just,
no.
I got you.
They were top 40 bands. I mean, and they all whatever was the hot tune at the point in time, whether it was James Brown, Sly and the Family Stone, or whatever was hot at that point in time, that's what they played.
Gotcha.
But I'm just giving you the dichotomy between the Young Senators and Chuck Brown at that point. And then, because I was doing that reconnaissance work to try to help and learn as much as I could to help EU. You know what I mean? So going to hear the top bands was something I had to do. So the first go-go I actually went to was Byrne Manor, Young Senators, and Chuck Brown. And
I played at Byrne Manor, and I didn't even realize that it had that much history.
Oh my God! I mean, so again, man, some of the more mature people look, and they probably been to Byrne Manor, and they understand what I'm saying. Yeah. So anyway, so between, I'm hoping not being too confusing. So I got the Showmobile, which is kind of helping the band, and now I'm trying to be immerse myself in the business. So I had to go and check out, top bands.
Right.
So I went to Burn Manor, and then then you had the Lajima Ballroom. I don't know if anybody here ever talked about. You ever heard of the Lajima Ballroom? Downtown on G Street.
Okay.
And it was a place that had about 4 or 5 different ballrooms. And on the weekend, you would have Black Heat, Scasey and the Sound Service, Chuck. I mean, they were all playing in different rooms, and it would be packed. Wow. And I mentioned that because I'm getting this education in terms of the bands in Washington, and on these bands, they were very, very good. They were very good. Now, from what I understand, the reason why these Burn Manor, and at the same time the Panorama Room, Knights of Columbus, in terms of socialization and having parties, that's where folk in Washington had to get together because they didn't have that many clubs. So a lot of the Catholic, the Catholic dance halls, that's where we function. That's where we head out. Okay, and that's where I guess go and bring your own bag and all of that kind of started.
Right. Now that continued even through a lot of the time. When I got into it, there was still
because DC was still pretty segregated socially during that period of time. So there really weren't that many clubs. I mean, later on it might have been the Mark IV and the Room, but there weren't that many clubs that folk could go to and have a good time. So again, the Panorama Room, the Knights of Columbus, Burn Manor, Northeast Gardens, Northwest Gardens, Squad Room. Those were the places that we went to have a good time. And the entertainment would be those bands I just mentioned, whether or not it was Father's Children, Brute. So all these bands played at the Go-Go. They were not necessarily Go-Go bands, right? Go-Go bands, but they played at the Go-Go. It was not Go-Go music during that point in time.
Well, so that brings me to my next question, because there seems to be a small but fairly vocal subset of people that I guess challenge, if you will, the idea that Chuck Brown was the inventor of go-go as a music as opposed to go-go as an event. And I've heard the names Young Senators, Black Heat, and a lot of those other bands that you mentioned brought up as being part of that. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I don't think it's too much. Should not be too much debate about that. I think that the Young Senators, Black Heat, Scasey and the Sound Service, The Aggression, Leadhead, all those bands played at the Go-Go.
Right.
But they didn't play go-go music.
Gotcha.
Okay. Matter of fact, the Young Citizens for a long time, they were the top band in Washington.
Right.
And when they left, they kind of like left. They left to back up Eddie Kendricks, and then Chuck, kind of like took over. After that, it was Chuck, Black Heat, and the Black Heat left, and then Chuck, just really took it over. But the go-go music, Malachi, really didn't really start till the mid '70s. So anyway, I just want to be clear, because I know there's a lot of confusion about this, but there were go-go's, and there were go-go bands who played in the go-go. A lot of them I mentioned, but they didn't play go-go music. Go-go music was definitely invented by Chuck Brown. There's no doubt about that.
In your experience in other, it's a common thing, with like, blanking on their name, what they were called then. Was it the West Mob? Who were they? They were had another name back at it wasn't Mass Extinction. I can't remember. But anyway, they went on to play as the New JBs or whatever. And then obviously you just mentioned the Young Senators going on with Eddie Kendricks. In your experience, is that something that happened in other cities where an entire band that is known, has a name in their own band, just sort of got picked up, the whole band, by a larger artist and toured around?
I think so. Yeah, I think there were other bands around the country that went out like that. Backed up different singers. A lot of times would be, singers that wanted their bands, a band to back them up. So they ran across a good, tight, self-contained band. Yeah, they'd make a plea, come on out and back me up.
Right.
So yeah, I think that did happen around the country.
Got it. Well, I'm digging into that a little bit because I always make the distinction between an artist and a professional musician. And it seems like the culture of DC musicians is more of that of a professional musician versus an artist. And I don't think there seems to be a blurring of the lines of what those two things mean because of the unique way in which you can be a go-go band and you literally are, 90% of the time playing somebody else's music. However, you achieve this level of stardom in DC that is not as common. I mean, at least in my experience, which is limited, admittedly, it doesn't seem to be, you don't reach the level of sort of.
Okay, let me help you out here. Okay, yeah. I think there was a transformation that went down musically in Washington.
Yep.
Make no doubt about it that the groups like the Matadors, Brute, Father's Children, Leadhead, all those bands were trying to make it nationally. Gotcha. Although they played cover tunes, they was distinct enough in their mindset. They were trying to go up there with the Earth, Wind and Fires and the Wars. That's where they were trying to go. Okay. Gotcha. The Young Senators, I mean, them bands were actually, although they played a lot of covered stuff, they had their own unique style. If you heard Brute, you knew that was a different band than the Aggression. Right. And although they played cover, if you heard Leadhead, if you heard the Father's Children, they were all different, Malachi, in their own right. And I think they all were going for national recognition, national stardom. Okay, no doubt about it. And these, I'm talking about these. You have some. I mean, the Matadors to me are probably one of the best bands that I've ever heard. Right. Those brothers could rock. They were very, very tight. And I think that because at the same time, although you had all this hotbed of talent here in Washington, you didn't have the mechanism to get out. You had the record companies here. They were in New York, right? They were in LA, they were in Nashville, they were not in DC. So a lot of times I think the bands kind of suffered, but the talent was here. You know why the talent was here? We need to talk about this too.
Please.
The talent was in DC.
Froze up a little bit.
They had some stick in the school, but that was East. I mean, they all had very good music.
Hey, Charles.
Huh?
I don't know if you can hear me, but you're freezing up and breaking up pretty bad. Hopefully, it maintains itself.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So you were talking about the bands and which bands were had designs on larger success than just local.
Yeah, I was just saying. I think the bands, the early bands of the 70s, I think they really wanted to become national acts, and I think that's what they worked to try to do. We had some really good bands. I mean, like Brute, like I was telling you. If you saw them, you know what they were trying to do. Leadhead, who was being sponsored by Bill Washington, who used to run Dimensions Unlimited. Remember that? And Leadhead was one of his bands, and they were trying to all go. So you had a lot of bands, Father's Children, and a lot of good bands in Washington that were trying to go national.
Well, so let me ask you a question, because you mentioned that you felt like the challenge that they were facing is that they weren't in New York or LA.
Right.
But my question is neither Gary, Indiana or Dayton, Ohio are the hotbeds of the entertainment industry either, but we have the Jacksons and the Ohio players from there. So what do you think was different about, why was it more difficult for DC bands? And I don't mean that in a negative.
I know you don't mean that pejorative, but I'm just saying you talk about the Jacksons, so that was not a good example.
Why not?
This is not a good example. But they were bands that got, I mean, like the Youngsters got out, Black Keys got out, and there were a couple other bands from Washington that made. There were a couple other bands that made it on, made a couple of records, and they got some national recognition, and they got out on the circuit. Third Joe and the Free Soul. They got out. So there were, it was a few that got out. It wasn't like they were totally shut out. You had about 4 or 5 bands, I think, that did make a mark and did, get out nationally.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah. And again, I'm not trying to be critical at all. The only reason I'm asking is because like the whole, the reason for the show is, I mean, we literally have had this, you're from New York, I'm from Annapolis. Neither of us are from DC, but both of us, the minute we experience this music, the rest of our entire lives has revolved around it. Right. I mean, same thing, I talked to Wink yesterday. He grew up in New York. I talked to Cam from Black Alley, that, it was the same thing with him. It's like the second you experience it, just your whole world just revolves around it. Right, right. Everybody, obviously, but for a lot of people. But yet we've still just been challenged to, really export it to the world over, the past 50 years. And I'm just trying to drill down into what really are what are the real and what are the perceived challenges.
Well, let's continue taking the walk, because I think now we're like at 75, 76, something like that. Okay. And so I think what kind of made it easy for bands to distinguish themselves in that early 70s period is there was a lot of soul searching going on, a lot of so-called messes music, happening. You had the War, Earth, Wind, and Fire, and so you had bands that were making music that were connecting with their audiences on a different level. Okay.
Yep.
And then what happened?
Disco
came in.
Well, first of all, in '76, I was born, so that probably was part of the problem.
Yeah, that's probably why disco came in. I'll tell you.
I created disco at coming out of the womb. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Yeah, I tell you that whole scene just toppled what was going on, because now you heard the bands I mentioned earlier, right? So now we have 77, 78, 79, going to 80.
Yep.
And I forgot when Bustin' Loose, when he released that,
I think it was 78, if I'm not
78.
I could be wrong. I could be wrong on that. So.
Okay, but you can go back and look what happened. Here's what happened. Here's what happened in Washington. The DJs were taking over. Those clubs I mentioned, Burn Manor, Knights of Columbus, the Panorama Room. So instead of hiring bands, they were hiring Tricky Rick, or they were hiring Breeze, or Maniac McLeod. They were hiring DJs, okay? And Chuck said, oh my God, I mean, I got to do something to continue working. And I think that's when, to use JB's analogy, that's when the light went on. JB told me they played, I think it was Northeast Gardens one night. And he said it was lines around the corner. And they hit Mr. Magic in that beat. I think Kim Boy was on the drums, and he just said they knew that they went into a whole nother atmosphere, when they hit that song. And that changed musically. I think it changed for the bands. It changed everything. It really changed everything, because now the bands I mentioned earlier, a lot of them bands, when the disco hit, and the music started to change, a lot of them bands were not willing, Malachi, to play that beat, to play that pocket, And so as a result, they weren't getting gigs.
Okay, so wait a minute. You said a lot of really important things in a few seconds, and I want to break some of them down. So the first one is that the club started hiring DJs instead of bands.
Right.
And that's really important, because that points to an economics issue. I would assume that the reason that they're hiring DJs instead of bands Is it because it's cheaper? Or is it because the DJ doesn't ever stop? Because as the legend goes,
it was a combination of that. It was a combination. I said earlier, the bands were playing a lot of, We Are the World kind of songs, and I think when disco came in, people just wanted to party.
Right.
They really wanted to have a good time. They just wanted to party. So they less cared about so-called message music as they cared about just letting their hair down, sipping on a 40 or whatever and just having a good time.
Right. Which is a typical cycle of music. And every I forget what the exact, there's actually science behind that. Every 20 or 30 years, we go back and forth between bubblegum pop and message.
Jazz. I think jazz went through the same evolution. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So so that was the one thing. And then the other thing you said was that when Chuck came out with Bust, if I understood you correctly, when Chuck came out with Bustin' Loose, when they first played it, I just already knew this is something different. This is something happening.
Right. Yeah.
Correctly. Okay.
Yeah,
so
I was Mr. Magic.
Okay, Mr. Magic.
Beat. That was a song.
Yeah. Oh, you talking about the Grover Washington Jr. song? Yeah.
Right. The Grover Washington.
Okay. So it wasn't necessarily Bustin' Loose the song. It was when he had actually incorporated the Grover Washington beat with the pocket into the music. Okay, gotcha.
Right.
All right. So okay, I thought you were saying it was Bustin' Loose, and I was just going to say that
Bustin' Loose came later, but Mr. Magic was first.
Right. I got it.
He said, I got a combination. I keep these people on the dance floor.
Yep.
And he did that. He's a conga player, and he kept the pattern, kept the pocket going between the songs, and kept people on the dance floor as long as he could.
And what was the reluctance that these other bands had to playing it?
Now I can really talk about EU. Okay, EU reluctance at that point in time, Malachi, is because they thought it would stuff their creativity. They said they knew that they could go out there and they could play that pocket, they could keep people dancing, but they wanted to be more artistic, and they felt that it was being threatened. So some guys in the band just thought they were just selling out, if they were to do that, play that beat. Now I'm gonna tell you a short story, and maybe you get a chance to talk to Bear. He'll elaborate. But I remember one day Bear came back from practice, and he had just heard Essence. And Bear would do a lot of reconnaissance. He would go out and hear a lot of bands and come back. And he heard Essence this one evening, and he said, "Man, we got to change. These guys, they are slamming. They really, really good. They had the audience, and we got to change." And that conversation, Malachi, started how can I say? It kind of broke up the old EU, and the new EU was born. The old EU, like I said, was more funky and stuff. This is the old EU.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if anybody out there gets a chance to get this album, you'll hear a different EU. This is what they were, and that brought on later on, the new EU. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But anyway, what happened, man? On a serious tip, about half the band decided to leave because Bear's argument won the day over. And this argument really was, if we want to continue to get paid, we want to continue to be, in the conversation, we have to give the people what they want to hear. Really, that's what he said. We got to give the people what they want to hear. Right. And the style of the band changed at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably in the 80s.
So that is a phrase that has lived on for many, many years. Give the people what they want to hear. And it's always been an interesting one to me. And it was one that I sort of railed against in the context of Mambo Sauce when I was creating Mambo Sauce, which was obviously many, many years later than what you're talking about. And the reason why is because I was coming at it from an artistic standpoint,
Right.
and my pushback to that was, well, if you just make hot shit, then people will want to hear it, and the give the people what they want to hear. And I don't know if this is the way you were saying it in the context of EU, but in the context of the way people were saying it to me with respect to my vision for Marvel Sauce was, well, you got to play cover songs. You got to play what people want to hear. That's what they want to hear. They want to hear other songs. And my thing is that, well, where do you think these cover songs are coming from? Somebody wrote them initially and played them for two people until those two people turned into 200 to 2,000 to 20,000. So to me, that was a very, and I don't know if that's the context in which you meant it, but I'm just.
It kind of is. I mean, because we were still playing covers, but we still played originals. Now, at that point in time, and we had, we had done an album, we had done a couple of singles. So we were doing original music, although we were still doing covers. And even when we bridged and went over to playing in the pocket, we did the same thing. We were doing covers and we were doing originals. EU Freeze, Shake It Like a White Girl, Knock 'Em Out, Sugar Ray, Rock Your Butt. I mean, I can go on and on about the original songs that EU did.
Right.
And mixed up in their sets,
Well, so at that time, when I would assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, I would assume that the lion's share of the income at that point is still coming from live shows, correct?
No question.
And in order to keep that income, I assume that's where most of the push to perform cover songs is coming from.
Right.
Which is still the same thing today. So my question is why was it back then that you guys were taking on the expense and the time to create albums and to create all of those singles when that wasn't really what was driving the income? I mean, if it's just strictly about how do we keep money coming in, what was the impetus? Like, what was the motivation for you guys to keep creating?
Well, it was dual, because even at that point in time, Malachi, if you had a tune on the radio, you had a bigger following. You got, so I used to tell the band, a tune on the radio is like your calling card.
Yep.
People hear that and they're more susceptible to want to go pay, $5, $10 to see you live. So the bands that were able to do their own tunes, get them played on WOL, WHUR at that point in time, it helped, with your popularity. So yeah, we tried both. At that point, we tried to do both.
But at this point, it was still more of a local strategy. It was still more of, okay, we're gonna get played on WOL, and that's gonna help us get more gigs and make more money. And
we kind of mixed it, because I think up to the 70, up to about 80, I think EU was really trying to do all they could to go national. Okay, we were really trying to do that.
Right.
How you submit your demos. We did all that kind of stuff, man.
Gotcha.
But at the same time, they want to keep playing, and that's what we did. So we would open for national act when they had national shows, do openings and stuff like that. Yeah. But I think when we got to about 80 and the go-go craze kind of hit, and then you saw that, you can make as much money playing here as you could on a national tour. And I think in the early 80s, it was hot in Washington, D.C. Because now, all the other bands I was telling you about, like The Aggression, Black Heat, 100 Years Time, 95th Congress, Brute, all those bands, they're not playing. It's a whole new set of bands now. And that's Rare Essence, Double Funk, Hot Cold Sweat. It's a whole new line of bands, Peacemakers, Little Bitty and the Masters. It's a whole different crew playing, And look, man, we go to the Coliseum, Washington Coliseum, with 8,000, 10,000 people, man, and pack that place. Or going to the Armory and doing the same thing with local shows. Not to even mention the go-go show of all times, live at the Capitol Center. What I mean? So I had to give you some kind of idea as what was really happening in Washington during that 80s time period. It was It was crazy, man.
Right.
It was crazy.
So when does this the infamous Spike Lee sing? This was he came to see them at 9:30 Club, right? This was,
9:30 Club.
but this was on F Street, not.
Yeah, we did a birthday party for him, and he came, and the rest is history. He heard them, man. He just said he had to do something with them, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
how did he know to hire you guys for his birthday party? Like, how did that even come about?
Well, he didn't hire us.
Okay.
The 9:30 Club hired us.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, because we had a relationship with the 9:30 Club.
Gotcha.
You know, again, you know, EU could play 9:30 Club too. Even though it was a local band, you know, we had Tino on the guitar.
Yeah.
You know, we could go in there, we could rock if we had to.
Yep.
So we did shows at 9:30. I think probably you guys did too, didn't you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, not that early, but later on.
This was the 9:30 Club when it was actually 9:30 Club.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, we didn't play there until it was over.
No, but so Spike didn't hire us.
Okay.
The 9:30 Club hired us.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And Spike just came and EU they were hot that night. Mm-hmm. And if you ever been to the old 9:30 Club, man, if you cranking, oh my God, everybody's sweating.
Right.
Everybody's sweating. Literally.
Right.
And I think Spike was mesmerized. He just had a great time.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, between yesterday and today, this is sort of an enlightening experience for me, because one of the things that I constantly, try to let people know that are trying to be successful on a larger level than just in DC is that, there isn't going to be just some magical person that just comes to see your show and presses a success button. However, in the case of what you're describing with Spike Lee, and I mean, not to discount any of the work that you guys had done before that, obviously you had to get to a certain point for him to even care. And then yesterday when I talked to Wink, and he talked about how they were playing outside on the buckets on the corner across from Rumors nightclub, and this guy, I forget the guy's name, came and checked them out for like a week, and then eventually brought Rick Rubin over to see them. So I guess maybe this is where that comes from, is because for EU and for Junkyard, two of the bigger bands that have done something on the national stage, that is sort of what happened. But that's pretty uncommon in the music industry as a whole for someone to, I mean, not to say it never happened, but especially now it doesn't happen.
Well, another way it happened too, I tell you, we did a show at the Coliseum. Mm-hmm. Essence, EU, Trouble, and Curtis Blow was the headliner. Okay, and I forgot the order. I never forget because Funk came into our dressing room and said, how's the family? That line from Purple Rain. But anyway, I never got to that. But I think Curtis was supposed to close the show. Yeah, and it's so long ago, and I think that we were supposed to go on before him, and he's going to go on after us. But I think he saw what was happening, okay? Yep. And he came to us, and he said, can we reverse this?
Yep.
And we said, no problem. And that started a relationship with Curtis Blow, and we ended up doing party time with him later on. Right. I think in essence, did the same kind of and Trouble too. It the same, kind of situations going down with the rappers, the hip hop artists particularly. They would come out here, feel the energy, and say, "You just need to collaborate." So yeah, we did a thing with Curtis Blow. At one point, Juki did a thing with Grace Jones.
Yep, Slave to the Rhythm.
Yeah. So anyway, so that stuff was happening, but you know what? It was not really connected. It was happenstance, And we told although the party time too, helped us out, it didn't, make us national stars enough. It still was.
Well, that's something that I think a lot of people say is, well, why why don't go-go bands or go-go artists collaborate with national artists more? And I think that a lot of people think it's not just a go-go thing either. It's just an artist thing in general. They think that if they attach themselves to this brighter star, then that's somehow going to pull them along, and that doesn't always happen. I mean, sometimes it does, but not. It doesn't happen if you don't have your shit together. And so, not saying that you guys didn't have your shit together, but I'm just saying a lot of artists think that they can, like they're just shortcutting the system by by doing that. So, okay, so you guys play the birthday party for Spike Lee, and then what actually does he approach you that night, or what actually happens? How did that actually play?
I think it was later on, because by that time I wasn't like the day-to-day manager of the band. Ed Hopkins was doing that. And I think Johnny Mercer was working with them, doing the law stuff. So I still had a relationship with the band. I still would book them and all that kind of stuff. But Ted was doing the day-to-day operation of management during that period. So he, when Spike and his people stepped in, Ted is the one that stepped up and made the deal and all of that.
Gotcha. So why did you end up stepping out of the way? It was just
a couple of different reasons. The main reason is I had to eat, so I had to get a job, and so I started working with Congressman Ron Dellums on the Hill, and I just couldn't serve two masters. You know what I mean? I couldn't work on the Hill and effectively manage the band at the same time. I tried to do that, it just didn't work out. But again, I kept my relationship, like I still got a relationship with the band. But I just knew, man, I couldn't, I couldn't pay my bills, man. I mean, that's another thing. And you know this as well as I do. It's very difficult to pay your bills just working on this music. You gotta burn a midnight oil somewhere else, man. So these guys, they really love this music, because very rarely, and I don't care how hot you are, because you're hot for a period of time, 3-4 months, maybe a year, something like that. But after that light goes out, you got to pay the bills, and that's what kind of happened to me.
Got it. Yeah. So that brings me sort of to another question that I had about. I noticed I was looking up some of the stuff on the book, and I want to get into that. But one of the things that struck me was Natalie Hopkinson had a quote that's on your website about go-go never selling out, and she made a comment in the documentary that was just on TV One as well about the fact that hip hop was sort of co-opted by the white corporate structure, and that's what allowed it to grow further. And go-go didn't allow that to happen, and that there's that the black dollar has been circulating in the go-go community for many years, and I'm just a little confused by that, because I know a whole lot of musicians in go-go, and I know a whole lot of managers, and I know a whole lot of people, sound guys, and I can probably count on two hands the amount of guys in go-go that make their full-time living in go-go.
Yeah.
So to me,
what I think, this is how I give you my response to this. I did when the book came out, The Beat, I did a radio show in Berkeley on WPFA, KPFA, Pacifica, and we're talking about go-go, and I don't know if you know I think his name is Michael Vincent. He's an author. He's done a lot of books on funk music, and he's very well knowledgeable about go-go, which was really good. So we had a good discussion that evening, and a gentleman called in, Malachi, because I think he asked me, why did I think go-go wouldn't go, national or international? And a gentleman called in, and he said, you know what? I kind of hope that go-go doesn't go national. And I said, whoa, wow. I mean, why would you say that? He said, because I think it wouldn't be authentic. It would lose the heart. And I said, wow. I mean, I'm in Berkeley, California, and the guys call into the radio station, you know what I mean, to drop that on me, man. I'm like, so I say that to say that for all of the success of the butt, remember that, right? The EU, they went around the world a couple of times on the butt.
Yep.
And when it came back to DC, they couldn't get a seat at the table.
Right.
You know what I mean? They could not get a seat at the table. And I think that hurt them a lot. Now, although, you know, the music, you know, was, you know, the butt, and Tissia loved all that, but what ended up happening at the record company, while they left Virgin, and Virgin did try to change them.
Mm-hmm.
They tried to change them. And it just, you had an internal struggle.
Mm-hmm.
The record company never fully understood the power or the whole existence of Go-Go. And EU, I don't think, is the only band that has nothing against with the record companies. They've tried. And so the message is in two ways. One, the audience, when EU got back, it took a long time to regain the trust in the audience. So they thought that they had sold out.
Mm-hmm.
And the record companies, they're trying to produce them. You know, they don't know how to capture the true essence of go-go music. And I think, again, it's not the only band that's suffering. So
let me ask you a question.
I understand what Natalie's saying, but at the same time, I understand what you're saying too, because I mentioned this today. I don't know of anybody that got rich from playing go-go or being affiliated with go-go. Unlike hip hop, you got Jay-Z, you got, you know what I mean? You got a lot of people.
Yeah.
P. Diddy, you know, a lot of people. I'm not hating on them, but I'm just saying we don't have the same experience in go-go.
Right.
You know?
Well, let me dig in a little bit to that because you probably would have, or you might have more insight in this than me, because the same legend is told of Trouble Funk, and I got Tony coming up next Friday. I'm going to ask him about it specifically as well. Of that, you know, went out into the world, made a big splash, came back, weren't hot in DC anymore. So my question is this: over the course of time in go-go, like I'll use Junkyard as an example. I just spoke to Wink yesterday and was talking about them the day before. Their popularity has gone like this over the years. Northeast Groovers, who I used to play for, our popularity over the years has gone like this. Backyard is a little bit of an anomaly. They, you know, they're a little bit more flat and then they just kind of shoot up like that. But at least in my experience, which again is more, of course, more limited than yours, which is why I'm talking to you. What
about Essence?
But was it what? Yeah. Well, Essence has gone up and down too. I mean, when I was in the go-go, like first getting into go-go, and I guess it wasn't when I was first getting into go-go, but they were like, there was a time when at my age group they were not cool. They weren't. I mean, of course, I'm sure they still were playing and they still had people coming to see them, but they weren't seen as the cool band. Like when Northeast Groovers and and Junk and Back were really big in the mid '90s, where Essence was like, oh, that's for old people. You know what I mean? At least in my age group. You know what I mean? So I only say that to say that was it definitely that, or is there actually evidence that people were saying that they sold out and that's why they stopped coming to see them? Or was it just part of the natural progression of bands go up and bands go down in DC on a local level anyway?
Well, I mean, I think that they thought that, I'm talking about EU again, I thought when they came back and they tried to, you know, get their footing, they just thought that they were fake. They just didn't feel them. They didn't think they cranked. They didn't, you know what I mean? It was all of that. I mean, and I think they probably played with the same intensity that they did prior to going on tour. But when they came back, I think that people just didn't feel them the same way. You know.
One more question about that. What made them come back? You know, like if you're the Ohio Players and you got a record deal and you're, you know.
Oh, yeah. Now remember I was talking about their record deal with Virgin.
Mm-hmm. They stopped.
So remember now, they had a marriage that, you know, went bad.
Right.
Okay. So you know, you don't have to support a record company right now. Mm-hmm. So what you gonna do?
Right.
You know what I mean? So, I mean, I wasn't with them daily, but I'm just surmising
For sure.
what I could see was going down. After they lost their record deal, man, they had to come back home, which is, interesting. I mean, now I know you talk to Donnell, he has a whole different take on this stuff. Donnell feels, and I to some extent I agree with him, man, that Washington as a location, I mean, there are not too many places where bands can play, 3, 4, 5 times a week.
I don't think there's anything that I know of.
Yeah, and make a living, some guys,
But that's
getting rich, but you can make a living.
Really make a living.
Huh?
Or is it just a hobby? Because that's where I sort of want to like get into. And listen, I want to clarify what I think. The picture that Natalie lays out, I would love that if that were true. I just don't think it's true. I don't think that there is this amazing ecosystem that GoGo has created that is really benefiting all of the people involved in GoGo. Almost every musician that I know and every person in GoGo that I know, it works for the government. Or like Donnell Floyd, one of the most prolific songwriters and dynamic performers in the entire genre, has worked for Verizon full time for 30 years. So that's the pushback that I give, and I know it's probably not a popular thing, and of course I'm cognizant of my complexion and how that may be taken by some people, but at the same time I'm just trying to get to the truth of how can we if we want to say in GoGo that we want to play every Thursday, Friday, Saturday and make a few $100s and play for our fans in DC and continue to do that, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think it's beautiful. I just don't think that it's this thriving economy that has sort of been glamorized.
Okay. In terms of the economy, beyond the bands, I think that there's a culture that has arrived, whether with madness, with the restaurants. I mean, I think there are a lot of other avenues that benefit as a result of go-go music.
For sure.
So I think that people, the venue owners, the restaurants. I mean, so I think that people are making money, not at the level that I would like to see them make it, like at Nashville. I think that DC really needs to step up and become a Nashville. I think that could happen because or New Orleans, you have musicians in New Orleans, man, that have been playing in New Orleans all their life, and they're just happy to do that. And the local government helps them. They subsidize them. They give them health care. They give them housing so they can play their music. But let me say this too about go-go, because I think you're right. Most go-go musicians who play because they love the music. Again, there are no Jay-Z's, in DC. All right. So these guys are playing because they love the music. You got bands like Vibe. I mean, Vibe, man, come on. They're great, man, but Vibe, they ain't trying to go nowhere.
No.
You know what I mean? But come on, man, they could crank.
But that's the other thing too. They don't. My frustration comes when musicians or people in go-go get upset that that we don't have any Jay-Z's, but they don't want to put in the effort that it takes to be Jay-Z. I'm very clear about what they're doing.
That's a conversation. Now, you want to have that conversation? Because that's a different conversation.
All the conversation.
I think that the majority, Malachi, are content.
For sure.
Okay? I think the majority of musicians playing in go-go bands are content. They're cool with it. All right? I think the Mumbo Sauce or the Black Alley or whoever the new guy girl coming down the road, since it's going to be, someone's going to have to come down and bust this whole thing up. I think Mumbo Sauce is on his way. I think Black Alley, obviously, they're a band that can play go-go. They're not a go-go band. And I'm with that. So I think, Malachi, something's going to have to come down the pipe to kind of bust us up. Because it's been where it is right now for a long time. With backyard, junkyard. I mean, that's it. I mean, so I think that, I don't know. I mean, I think that another configuration is going to have to come down and shake it up.
Right.
You know, and probably be a younger. But here's the thing too, man. I mean, look, these brothers and sisters, I know them, man. Look, I'm in my 70s, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so most of these guys, I mean, you know, bearing them, they in their 60s.
Yep.
Okay. Junkyard, Bugs, Bugs got to be what, in his 50s, you know?
Yep.
Genghis might be in his 50s,
Mm-hmm.
you know? I mean, so these not no young guys, man. I mean, so you know, I mean, and on EU, again, we went through EU started when they were 14, 15 years old.
Yep.
Where's that, you know, new talent coming from to push it? Essence, they started around the same time.
Yep.
So Northeast Groovers, how old were you guys when you got, I mean, so all you guys started at you know,
when they started. I'm a little younger. I came later on
but you get my drift.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, you understand where I'm coming from.
Yep, 100%.
But now, what has happened? Why? Partly, the reason why that stopped is because I went back to the public schools and the music program, and they cut off the music programs in the schools.
Yep.
They cut off letting bands play in the schools, letting bands play in the rec centers in Prince George's County, Peppermill, you know, Glen Arden, all those rec centers we used to play. You don't play it anymore, so now you don't have the all age coming up. So most people now in go-go really don't get a chance to experience it till they get to be what, 20, 21 years old.
Right.
You know? So that's another, you know, so anyway.
No. That's what this is for. I mean, that's the whole point. I'm trying to.
I think we got to go back to putting the school music in the schools, allowing these bands to play in the schools, because if that doesn't happen, I mean, I'm not going to say it because I don't believe it's going to happen, but I mean, Go-Go is going to have a little intersection a little hiccup, because I think the youngest band might be a bounce band, and they might be in their 30s, right?
Yep. No, absolutely.
But there's no teenage phenom bands out there, are there? Not that I know of.
No, there aren't. But that brings me to my question that I've asked multiple people on this series, which is, do you need a band to be go-go?
See, you know, I'm old school, so you know, I'm gonna say I think you do, but I mean, the production deal now, the production avenue is so sophisticated right now that you probably don't. But I mean, but I still, Malachi, I just feel like if you, the heart and soul of the,
that's a hard question for anyone.
It would pain me for somebody to come out with a slick production that I know they've made in their bedroom.
Well, I hate to tell you, but I've already got some. I didn't make it, but I've got a production company. I'm just
saying. I'm going to listen hard. I'm going to see if I can feel it, because part of Go-Go's attraction. We're going back to the record companies and why we've had such a hard time.
Yep.
It's because they have not been able to reproduce that feel of Go-Go. And I don't know if you can produce the feel of go-go in your bedroom. I really don't know.
Well, let me ask you a question. Did you feel when you heard Crazy in Love by Beyonce and Jay-Z, or when you heard, I'm assuming you're familiar with these records, maybe I'm assuming wrong, but or One Thing by A. Marie, did those feel like what did you, I mean, this is my argument. A lot of people say that you have to have the call and response. You have to have a live band. You have to have a lead talker for it to be go-go. And my response to that is, I feel like, and this is why I think the reason of the title of your book is the title of your book, and the title of that documentary is the title of that documentary, is that it's about the beat. And if the beat there, then all of the other stuff is superfluous. And my argument to support that is that the first time you heard Jill Scott, It's Love, or Beyonce, Crazy in Love, or A. Marie, This One Thing, if you're from the DMV or been around it for any particular, for any period of time, the first thing you said is that's go-go. And nothing else about those songs was go-go except for the beat. You know, even the Mambo sauce, Welcome to DC, it's me playing rock guitars on there, and there's a rapper and there's nothing else go-go about it except the percussion and and the cowbell. So to me, if you can recreate that beat, which understandably, admittedly is a difficult thing to do. I just don't think that people have really spent a lot of time trying to do it. And so that's what I'm working on now. But back
Well,
to
look here. Here's the thing about me. I would never say never, but I'm telling you, it's about the feel. And
Yep.
you hit it on the head. It is the beat. I mean, you got Kirk Franklin also
Yep.
did Go Track. I mean, so it's and when when you hear it,
Yep.
then okay. So hearing is one thing, but when you feel it, that's
Yep.
the other thing.
For sure.
Think about it. Can I just hear a beat that you got, but can I actually feel it? So if I could feel it, I mean, that's the difference between the butt and lock it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? The butt was off the chain nationally, and but if you drop lock it, come on, man. You know what I'm saying? It's a whole different feel. But
Right.
that's what I'm trying to say, man. We got to see. I would never say never, but let me also say this. Like I said, I'm getting up there, and I know, and I welcome some younger minds, some younger talent, putting their arms around this and making this happen. Because I hate to see this. I still don't think it's just going to go away. But I think that just like with any other music, that's going to go in a different direction. It's just going to take some new producers. Back in the day, we had Shine, we had Max Kidd. We had different producers. I mean, I don't know Tone P that much, but I understand he's a younger producer. He may got some better ideas and to make this thing more palatable nationally, which I think has to happen without losing. I think the challenge is, can I do that without losing the field? And I think he got to really hit his head and his heart on this was Darnell. He was really trying to, come up with a way to make that happen. I think,
Yeah. I just don't understand why there aren't more people that are trying to make that happen, but that's not something that I can solve, But so sort of digging back into, what you were talking about sort of, I guess, outside factors that contribute. And one of them, as you mentioned, was taking the music education out of the school system.
Yeah, right.
And obviously that is, had a huge effect.
Huge.
And I think that, I mean, without digressing too much, my only point on that is that I feel like I was talking to Chris Richards from the Washington Post about this a couple of weeks ago, and his take on it was that, go-go is this form of music that's been passed down through the traditions and hopefully will continue to do so. And my fear is that it has not been passed down to the next generation. I said traditions, I meant to say generations. It has not been passed down to the latest generation. And I think a lot of that is because of what you described about the school system.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I think that I'm 43. I don't feel old. I don't have any gray hair yet, but I know that when I was 14 or 15 years old, 43 was like my dad. That was old, that was old, not to mention somebody that's 60 or 70. So right. Even the bounce beat guys that are in their late 20s, early 30s, when I was 14 or 15 years old, that was old. I'm like 30. Wow, you're like middle-aged or something, so and I expect most people had that same experience. So my thing is if we don't figure out a way to make go-go cool again for those younger kids, then it is just going to go away, because your fan base is not going to be there anymore. There's not just always going to be a
okay. I don't think it's going to go away. I don't think it's going to go away. I think it's going to happen. It's going to be more like jazz in New Orleans, okay? Because I think what happens in Washington and Darnell, I mean, I love that brother. You're going to have your wine sippers. You're going to have your people that want to go out, sip their wine. After the second set, they're going to want to hear the beat, and they're going to, put it in the pocket. They're going to have a good time.
Right.
You're going to have the
go-go band anymore. He's got an R&B band now. I know because Donnell doesn't even play in a go-go band anymore. He's got an R&B.
Look here. You had what man? Marcus Johnson.
Yep.
Yeah, Marcus, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so look here. I'm gonna tell you. I went to see him years ago. He used to do a Thursday night set at the Holiday Inn on Capitol Hill. All right.
Yep.
His first 2 sets. He'd be the Marcus Johnson, piano, blah, 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 right?
Yep.
His 3rd set, oh my God. Boom.
Yep.
All right. My point is, Darnell might be an R&B band now, but that 3rd set, I'm telling you what's going to happen. And that's what DC's about. Okay, that's your wine sippers, you're grown and sexy, the same thing. And then he calls a young and restless, backyard, junkyard. The point I'm trying to make is that when folk in Washington, when they, mature and they go to clubs, they go out, they run into the music. Unfortunately, now they're 21, 22 years old, and they like it, and the bands are there. The thing is, what we have to do, what has to happen though, we got to start bringing in some new talent, and new talent at the same time. Malachi, we talked about a new sound. I think we could still keep it in the pocket, but we got to modulate it in such a way that younger people feel it. If you get a chance, you might want to also bring on T-Bone, because he has a real interesting. T-Bone has a real interesting concept about how young people now are hearing the music, and how people in your generation and our generation, how we heard the music. It's very interesting. So, but I think that if we could do that in the next couple of years, if we have another, you're gonna take more than one go breakout song, an artist, and then hopefully they'll come down. But I think that'll, in terms of popularity, that'll keep it on the charts. But I think in terms of Washington, they're gonna always be go-go bands. I just think it's part of who we are.
Yeah. Well, I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
And some people think that it has to be one thing or the other, and I think some of that comes from the conversation we were having earlier about, when a U goes out and does this, then they can't come back home.
Right.
Goes out and does this, then they can't come back home. And I think that I feel like, there are tons of artists in every single genre across the board that have been signed to record companies and been shelved and been told to do things this way and didn't want to do it that way. It's not just, that's not unique to go-go. That's just the industry in general. And so I think we do sort of do ourselves a disservice by using and I understand why, because it's not like we have a whole lot of go-go bands and a whole lot of examples to use. So we take those two situations and use them as though that's a reason not to do it, rather than looking at it, that's sort of just par for the course for people that are signed to major record labels. Doesn't matter what genre you're in, they're going to try to say, oh, we want you to do it this way, we want you to do it that way.
Absolutely.
Is that these days you're far less beholden to the record labels, than you ever have been before. But I want to get a little bit to your role on the previous role on the DC Arts Commission, and the reason I bring that up is because I got an email earlier from the CARES Act emergency relief funding. That the CARES Act emergency relief funding was awarded to 36 local humanities organizations in DC, and none of them that I am aware of were affiliated with GOGO. I talked to Big Tony a couple of weeks ago, and I know that he is part of an initiative that Frank Sirius, aka Scooby,
that's good. Yeah, that's very good.
And I think that this is important because I don't think anything had gone to GOGO because there wasn't an entity set up
to
receive it on behalf of GOGO and to distribute it on behalf of GOGO.
Right.
And so I don't know how much this is not my area of expertise by any way, shape or form. So that's sort of why I'm asking you, is that I assume that your position on the DC Arts Commission might give you a little more insight.
Well, I'm not on the commission any longer.
Previous. No, I know you were.
Previous. But let me just say this, because I think you're bringing up a really good, serious point, which calls for why I think that, go-go advocates have to be involved. Because, I didn't know about the money you're talking about being distributed, but I think the fact that you have, Frank, you got Natalie, you got Ron, Yachty, these folks right now watching what's going on.
Yep.
The thing now is you got to set up the organizations so you be able to accept those funds as they're distributed, because they're gonna have some funds that come down. So you gotta set up your 501c3s. You gotta be legal, and you gotta be in a position where you can accept those funds.
So who should do that?
We just finished because I brought up New Orleans earlier, and maybe some of your people out who are looking at this might want to do some research. New Orleans has a foundation or effort set up where they help, musicians, local musicians, with healthcare, with housing, and other services. And I think that's tremendous. And I think something like that is needed in Washington, D.C.
Right.
I think they may have the same kind of thing in Nashville too. But the point I'm trying to make is we have to be involved. We got to be full-time citizens across the board. We got to vote. We have to be out there advocating for what we want. And we got, we got to show up. We got to be on these boards and commissions as we get older, and we still love go-go music. So if you're out there listening, you still need to be on boards and commissions to help the city and help to steer the city in ways that they can enhance and help this culture as we move forward. So now back to the commission. When I did serve on the commission, Marion Barry appointed me.
Okay.
And one of the reasons why I think he appointed me, because at the point in time, I was a strong advocate for go-go music. And he wanted to have someone from Southeast, leading the commission. And I did that. I tried to open it up and try to share the knowledge I had with the other folks on the commission so they would understand that go-go musicians are citizens of the city, their fathers, their mothers, they have jobs. Like you said, they pay taxes. And I think we did a good service in trying to explain that, because prior to that, as in the 90s, we went through this turbulent period where, go-go was seen as this pariah.
Yeah, that's when I got into it.
Yeah. And so we had to do what we could to try to dispel that. And I think that Marion Barry, because he understood what we were all about. And we did a couple of records about, we had a DC Go-Go Free Project, DC Don't Stop for Dodge City.
Yep.
It does not stand for Dodge. So we did a lot. The Go-Go bands did a lot to try to curb the violence and drug abuse in Washington, D.C. We never got credit for it. But those who were paying attention know that. And so right now, today, that's why I'm so proud that the bands are standing up again. Against gentrification, against gender abuse, housing, keeping hospitals in Southeast. And that's great. Their voice, but you got to stay at it. You can't just, raise your voices one day and go away. You got to stay in the game. You got to stay in the game.
Well, with respect to what we were talking about in terms of the grant money that was given, it just came out today. So
okay.
So
I'll check it out.
Yeah, so I'll forward you the email too.
Yeah. Okay.
And maybe there are, now I just quickly glanced at the names. I just didn't see the word go-go. So just because there isn't the word go-go doesn't mean that it's not benefiting anybody in go-go. I don't know. But my question is, for example, because obviously people in go-go are very cautious about dealing with things, because there's, it's, for a long time it's been a business closely associated with the street. There's not a lot of trust involved.
That's right.
So if you and in some cases, I will say from personal experience, sometimes that is warranted. Most of the time it's not, but a lot of times it is. So my question is, if there was somebody that should be the person setting up, or the group of people setting up this foundation, who should that be? I don't mean individual people. I just mean, what job in the industry should they have? Should it be the musicians? Should it be managers? Should it be promoters? Should it be
a cross section? I think the effort that Frank, he said, Big Tony and them are working with, I think there's been 3 or 4 different iterations. The most shorter Darnell Most tried that too.
Yeah, I was part of that. Yep.
I mean, so that's really what it needs to be. It really needs to be musicians, managers, promoters, advocates. You need to have a coalition of all concerned. That's really what you need, and set up your organization and advocate for the culture. But at the same time, you got Ron and Natalie. Ron's doing the museum, the cafe. Natalie's helping him out, and I think that she's been a great voice for Go-Go. And same thing with Yachty. Just keeping it in front. I think it's going to take some time before all that settles, but for right now, I think Frank, in serious, he needs to, establish his organization, and hopefully this time around, the musicians and others involved in the culture will take it serious. Because again, like you said, if they distributing these funds, and if you don't have the organization, the entity to accept it, then you can't really cry. You know what I mean? The CARES Act is trying to help folks who've lost their jobs and give them some some dollars, whatever. But you don't have the organization to accept it. You can't really help. So that's what we got to do. We got to set up those vehicles.
Well, touching back on the music in the school system. So you guys had, in conjunction with the book that you and Kip wrote, which everybody should buy if they have not already bought. It is you can get it at The Beat Is Go-Go, right? I got the website up on the screen. The Beat
All right, okay. Yeah.
There we go. So if you don't already own it, go get it. And you guys had an initiative called Teach the Beat, which was trying to teach.
I'm very proud of that. I mean, when the book came out. This young lady came to one of the book release parties we did, and she works for Teacher for Change. Her name is Deborah Mincott, and she said to us, "Was anything I could do to help you guys? Just let me know." So anybody that knows me, Malachi, knows that if you throw me an olive, I'm going to be there. Yeah. So I set up a meeting, we met with her, and we decided what we could do in tandem was to set up Teach the Beat. That there was because her organization is Teaching for Change, and she focuses on books and some curriculums around different issues of dealing with social change. All right, and so she saw this go-go as the same kind of issue because kids in the school did not know about the history, the relevance of go-go music, but we didn't have a curriculum. So we had to put together a process to come up with a curriculum, that the teachers could use to teach the subject. So we set up a couple of workshops. We had workshops for the teachers. If people go online to The Beat Is Go-Go, you'll see all the stuff that we've done over the years. And right now, man, I'm very, very proud because we got Juju, Sugar Bear, John Buchanan, Sweet Cherie, Darnell Cato. They go into the schools and teaching various subjects around go-go music. And two different levels. One, the theory of go-go music, which people don't understand. Juju breaks it down. The whole theory of go-go music, he breaks it down. And then the whole history of go-go, the social issues that it had to overcome, all of that. That's a whole other subject. Right. And the teachers love it. And what they found, Malachi, is that the kids go home, start talking to their parents, and they found out their parents know more about this stuff and their grandparents. It's been around that long. But now you got a intergenerational conversation going on around this music. So we're still right now trying to get funded from the Commission on the Arts to go back into the schools when they open back up. But that's one program I'm very, very proud of. And again, I'm asking you to go and check it out, thebeatisgogo.com, and you'll see some of the stuff that we're doing in the school.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
People don't realize. When you go and talk to these students, and particularly Juju, and you engage them, and you can just see in their eyes, man, and their smile. How they take it. It's awesome. It is so awesome. And then I did this one class, and a student said to me, "Well, you might know my father, because he played with 100 Years Time. I mean, so you get that kind of, you know what I mean, feedback going on. And of course I knew a father, you know, but the point I'm trying to make is you get that feedback going on and people, more importantly, learning a very important lesson about go-go on the music side and on the social side.
Right. Well, so I spoke with Cam. I don't know if you know Cam Poles. He's the manager of Black Alley, and I don't think a lot of people know, but he was
Yeah.
the one that sort of brought the idea of the bill to make go-go the official music to Kenyon McDuffie in the first place. He's kind of a behind the scenes guy, but it struck me as kind of an interesting parallel, because I think that, you know, I saw a lot of people saying, well, we already knew that. We already knew it was the official music of DC. and in similar fashion, I saw a lot of people when they painted Black Lives Matter on the street saying the same thing. Well, we already know that. We know Black Lives Matter. How do you think, what do you think, what role do you think that symbolism plays?
Here's the thing. In terms of music being official, go-go being official music in Washington, D.C., in order for that to happen, you got to put some teeth. You got to put some substance. So right now, if I land in Washington, D.C., then maybe there should be some bands playing at the airport, okay? To give you a feel for this official music. But you go to New Orleans, you're going to hear some jazz. Okay, that's one thing. Second, we need to have a round table and clear up relationship with these venue owners so that they will be more susceptible to bringing in go-go bands.
Yep.
They don't have to come in undercover. They could be go-go bands playing in your venues.
Yep.
Third, the city needs to become more proficient in how could I say promoting go-go to tourists. Because right now, if you check into the Washington Hilton and you say, I want to see a go-go band, the concierge look at you like you crazy.
Right.
You know? So we got to do more in that area.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then we have to do more in terms of having a better atmosphere around the music, you know, so people don't still think it's over there. We need to be able to put the music in venues across the city, you know, and that's what we need to fight to make sure. My thought is that DC can and should be a model city in terms of music, like Nashville, like New Orleans, like Chicago. Like I go out at night, I think you could have 4 or 5 clubs on 8th Street Northeast that played go-go music. The same way you go to Nashville. You go to Nashville, as you know, Mark, you got 4 or 5 different clubs back to back promoting country music.
More than 4 to 5, yeah.
I mean, so we could do the same kind of thing. I think that's what we have to do. Now, we're working with the city to try to bring some of this stuff on board, but you know, it's hard work. So we can't just let, you know, I love the mayor, I love the fact that the city council did this, but they can't just get off cheap like that. We're gonna have to invest some resources, some funds. And going back to Frank Period, and going back to Ron, and Natalie, and Yachty, and others have the vehicles we could be able to set so we can do something at a different level.
Right. But if I understand you correctly, the bill at least starts to open the door for those things. So it's
well, the bill said that the mayor had, I think, 250 days to come up with a program. Mm-hmm. So, and we've been talking to them, Mordecai. So I think they're about to come back with something, and this is just be a beginning, you know. So I don't know exactly where we stand right now, but I do know that the city is very serious about coming back with some plans to take us to the next level.
That's great. I just wanted to clear that up because it seems like a lot of people just sort of dismiss it as just unnecessary symbolism. And you know, like I was talking to Cam today, and you're confirming that it's just an opening of the door.
And people need to know this, that there was no way that legislation was going to go forward if it didn't have any teeth. I mean, Natalie, Ron, Yachty, the rest of the people that were really promoting it, they were not going to let that go through if it didn't have any teeth. So just to say, you know, go-go's official music in Washington, D.C., no, that's just not enough.
Right.
Like you said, we know that. People on the street, they already know that.
Right.
But for the city to make this profound statement right now, I think it's timely because, as you know, the demographics in the city are changing.
Absolutely.
So we got, you got to put your stake down right now, man. And evidence by what happened to Metro PCS. You know what I mean? So that was just the first 5-0. We got it. Okay. That's how you want to play. Right now, Gogo's is official music. And we're going to set up other avenues to keep it intact, to make sure that, you know, Gogo is around for centuries to come.
For sure. I love it. Well, I got
it. And it is the pocket, man. Like Tom Ellis would say, it's the pocket. So I don't know, man. I don't know. I still want to hear my drummer and my conga player. But
I'm going to show you some stuff. It's more bounce beat stuff, but I'm going to show it to you anyway.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Well, so I've got to start wrapping up, but before we go, I just want to get your thoughts on the TV One documentary you were quoted in.
I thought the TV One documentary was very well done.
Yep.
It was very professional. What people need to understand, my folk in DC, is that was not for us. Okay, we know all of that stuff.
Yep.
And more. That was for your cousin that live in Detroit.
Yep.
That live in Michigan, that live in Chicago, that live in San Francisco, that live in Atlanta. Yep. That's what that's for. That was not for us. So we got to look at it like that. And it was a good first step, man. I think Kathy Hughes and TV One, they did an excellent job. I ain't mad at them. I just hope that my brothers and sisters that go in and out of Gogo understand that it was not necessary for us. It was for the folks around, not only this country, because you know it's an international company.
Yep.
So for folks now, when they hear Gogo, they know that it's not white girls with boots dancing.
Right, indeed. And well, Bo Sampson was on here earlier. I'm not sure if he's still on or not, but we're going to get him on soon too and talk to him. He was the I forget his exact title, but the producer or executive producer of the documentary. Yeah, man. Well, Charles, listen, thank you so much. I appreciate you braving all of these exciting new technical things to
man. You know. Look at man. You can teach your old dog new tricks. I'm ready.
I really appreciate it, man.
Look at, I'm gonna tell you, man. I appreciate you doing this. I think this is a valuable asset right now to get folks to open up, to share their ideas, and hopefully, I know you. As hopefully, at some point in time, you'd be able to, you know, to assess what you're hearing, because I think for the most part of what I've been hearing, people basically saying the same thing. You know, I think we know where we are, and we know that it's time for some fresh voices, some fresh voices, and hopefully, you know, they come up real soon. But you know, and some new ideas. I mean, so if it's the tone piece, I don't know who else other producers out there. I know Chucky's been out there for a while. Oh, before you go, now you know, and I don't know what's happening with this, but they're like 5 tunes that will be coming out soon, right? I Hear You Records got EU, they got Frank Sirius, and they got Junkyard, right? And then
this is Daryl Brooks.
Daryl Brooks. And then Chucky with Backyard and Snoop and Essence. So we're still waiting on them. And then there's probably other stuff in the pocket. But that's another thing that hurts us. You know, we had this national documentary, and there's nothing new that hit. I mean, come on, guys.
Timing is something that's been lost on us. In this
man. I mean, and right now, what are we doing? I mean, I know guys in the studio, you ain't doing nothing else. So hopefully they're in there making some music, but you need to put it out, man, soon.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, I think that we still have this sort of precious you know, thought process around releasing music, which is not the way it's done these days.
Yeah.
People aren't putting out an album every 2 to 3 years now anymore. People are putting out a single every month, or sometimes a single every week. And it's about constant content that's being served up to your fans all the time, because people's attention span is so much shorter now because we have so many distractions with all kinds of technology and everything going on. Right. So you have to learn how to deliver your content in a different way. That's why I do this show, I started it 4 times a week. It's now 3 times a week, probably going to back down to 2 times a week because I've got some other projects that are ramping up, but you got to keep just putting the stuff out and let the snowball build instead of being super precious and,
You're
putting
right.
it out every 2 to 3 years or something like that. So
Hey, man, you keep on keeping on. I'm here for you. So,
appreciate it.
for you, my brother.
Appreciate it. Listen, I appreciate all the support you've given.
Yeah, look here, understand you got some guys in LA too, man, that might be putting some stuff down.
Yeah, I'm working on it out here too. Yeah, I got.
Yeah, now people should know there are a couple of bands right here in North Carolina. There's one called Just Once, very good in Raleigh, and there's another one in Raleigh called 919. Both of these bands, they can crank.
Oh, really? I had no idea. I mean, I knew.
Well, you need to tell me Just Once, man. He'd be a good conversation for you to have. My man, Angelo, and Santonio. Santonio would be a good person to talk to about Go-Go in Raleigh, North Carolina. Very good band.
Okay, yeah. We'll talk afterwards, and
okay.
Yeah, let's link him. Let's link him
Okay.
up. But thanks so much, Charles. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, man.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right, thanks everybody for tuning in to Gogotalx, brought to you by GOGOTIX. That was Charles Stephenson, the original manager of EU Experience Unlimited. Thank him very much for spending so much time with us, and thank you everybody for sticking through some of the technical difficulties. I will cut them out of the final video that will go back up on YouTube. Yeah, that's it for this week. Let's see, who do we have next week? I know that next Thursday we are going to come back with Wink because he was having some connection issues. So we're going to come back next Thursday with Wink from Junkyard Band. If you missed that yesterday, you need to watch it because that was really a great interview all the way up until things went out. So okay, yeah. So on Wednesday the 15th we have my man Amir Boyd, who is the senior national director of urban promotions for Interscope Records. So he's going to be up with us next Wednesday talking about that. And then again on Thursday we have Wink, and then on Friday we have Tony Fisher of Trouble Funk. So everybody make sure you tune in, and thank you guys so much, and we will see you next week on Wednesday. All right, check out gogotix.co for the upcoming schedule, and we'll see you then. Thanks.